Why do I get my hopes up so high for the Bears for them to constantly let me down? I'm so sick of this. They do this every single year. Why? Why? Why did we sign Andy freaking Dalton? We already have Nick Foles. Like, why? Okay, we have another quarterback who's a fringe starter, mainly a good backup at this point, and now we have two of them. What was the point of Dalton when we have Mitchell Trubisky? Like, I understand Mitch was a free agent, but I'm pretty sure we could have gotten Mitch for cheaper, or maybe about the same price, who is significantly younger. Yes, Dalton is a better passer, but oh God, why? You talk of the promises of we could get Russell Wilson, we could get Deshaun Watson, we could throw the entire bank at anything, but no. Why didn't we even focus on the draft? All right, like why? All right, I guess we'll get into Dalton's contract, and then we'll talk a little more into this analysis, but as you can tell, my disappointment and my frustration with being a Bears fan has been clearly shown right here. All right, so the Bears signed Andy Dalton to a 1-year, $10 million contract in which he also has a potential $3 million he can earn in incentives. In all objective honesty, the contract isn't a terrible one. You get, in theory, a decent backup fringe starter for a relatively cheap price on a 1-year contract. While that's great for like 90% of the teams in the league that have a pretty established quarterback or a young quarterback who needs either mentoring or competition to play up to, the problem is the Bears have this exact player already. We have Nick Foles. And sure, Nick Foles in sparing amounts was amazing. And other times, our offense was absolutely non-existent. None. Zero offense. And against our battered O-line that really wasn't anything great, is this going to be any different? Is it? Yeah, his contract isn't bad. But do we really need another QB on the roster? Especially one at that value. I'd rather be drafting a quarterback at this point if we were going to let Mitch go, which I believe we just did. He's in free agency. I think they're still figuring it out. They might have just signed him at this point. I've heard some conflicting things. If I hear anything, I'll put it in the description to see what actually happened with Mitchell. But I'm wearing his jersey. Mitchell Trubisky, this is to you, sir. I wish you well. I really do. I don't think you necessarily got the fairest shake from all the fans in Chicago. A lot of people were upset when we drafted you. You're a hard worker. You have the right mindset to be a good quarterback. It just honestly comes down to the fact that you couldn't execute when it mattered, and you cannot throw the ball more than like 10 yards downfield. Like, that's really it. You're a good dude. You seem to embrace Chicago, but Chicago never repaid you that favor. So I wish you well. I hope you prove us wrong. I don't think you're a bad dude, and whatever your next place is, I wish you all the best. But aside from that little letter to Mitchell Trubisky, who's no longer on the Bears, given that we signed Andy Dalton, I hope the Bears draft a quarterback. I really do. I mean, I know a lot of people are talking about how they want an offensive player or an offensive lineman with our 20th overall pick. I think we really need a quarterback. I think maybe if we can snag one in the one of our later round picks, that could be fine too, but I don't want, all right, the Bears pick at 20. I expect us to not really be able to move anywhere ahead of a team that has within the first three quarterbacks off the board. And I expect those players to be Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson. So I'd say out of the next three most realistic targets at quarterback that we could go looking into the future for the Bears, there's either Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, and Trey Lance. Out of those three, I like Mac Jones. Sure, I'm biased. I'm a student at the University of Alabama. I've watched him play. But I think Mac has great intangibles. I also think he is a hard worker. I think he's undervalued, especially with how Tua performed this year after a hip injury, and they just think that's how all Alabama quarterbacks are. But I think Mac is something special and has something to prove like he did this year, but in the entire league. And I wish him the best. I'd love for the Bears to draft him. A lot of people and analysts complain that he's not a good fit because you have a bad O-line. And that's true. We wouldn't need O-line. But I want a quarterback who can actually pass the ball as his primary function. And sure, he might be a statue, but we saw Mitchell Trubisky. The dude can run around like a chicken with his head cut off, but the dude can't throw more than 10 yards downfield or onto the left side of the field. At all. It's bad. Then there's Kyle Trask. He's pretty good, although when he had absolutely no weapons in his bowl game against Oklahoma, he absolutely crapped the bed, and he literally got benched. I think that's a little overblown. I think Trask is still decent, and he's definitely under the radar in my opinion, especially with the numbers he put up at Florida. Sure, as a Bears fan, I'm not super big on Florida quarterbacks, mainly because I got to witness Rex Grossman as a young boy, but I still think Trask is a decent option. And then there's Trey Lance, and I don't know why, but I feel like if he's available at our pick, we're going to pick him out of all the quarterbacks. It seems like every year there's this weird, stupid infatuation with these quarterbacks who play at absolutely no-name universities like Teeter-Totter School of the Blind of North Dakota, and they somehow shoot up a draft board over a more proven commodity because apparently they have one physical metric that scouts love to drool over. I swear they did this last year with Jordan Love. I swear it feels like they're also kind of doing this with Zach Wilson this year, albeit Zach Wilson, I actually watched him a decent amount, and he actually looked really good. And then there was, who was the year before that? We've seen this trend. It's like Josh Rosen in that draft, which he ended up being a complete bust. Arizona didn't give him a fair shot, but he went to Miami, which really wasn't even planning on it, and Fitzpatrick was a much better quarterback. But it's these kind of quarterbacks that don't come from proven schools, and I'm not saying not every quarterback does. I mean, look at Tom Brady. Yeah, he went to Michigan, and he was the 199th pick. But he went to Michigan. People have heard of that. Or Russell Wilson was picked late. He went to Wisconsin. Or Dak Prescott, who went to Mississippi State. I know, yes, there's Carson Wentz. But Carson Wentz literally just got traded. And honestly, I would have rather us tried to trade for Carson Wentz over Andy Dalton. People are so down on Carson Wentz because he has one bad year. But I think that's not entirely on him, as I've mentioned in my Carson Wentz video. I would have rather had Carson Wentz than Andy Dalton. I would have been willing to give up the assets that Indianapolis did to get him from Philly. As for Andy Dalton, I don't think you're a bad dude. I just don't think you're a good fit for our team based on where we want to be, which is we want to be playoff contenders. I know we have that stout defense led by none other than Khalil Mack, who is an absolute stud, and I enjoy him. He's probably one of my favorite players. Him, Eddie Jackson, That defense, I just love watching them. They're a great unit. We need a quarterback. We need to stop acting like it's the 1960s and 70s, where we're going to go with a running back offense. We're going to run the ball a million times. Yes, that is the old way. And yes, we've had some great running backs like Walter Payton and Gale Sayers, both of whom are incredible or who were incredible players at the time. But it isn't that time anymore. How you win is with a dynamic quarterback who can have elite passing offenses. The Bears have never had an elite passing quarterback. Terrible. Jim McMahon. Look, Jim McMahon led that 85 Bears squad, but in reality, he wasn't some elite quarterback that, set the world on fire. He did a good job, and we won the Super Bowl by an ungodly amount. But make no mistake, that was a result of probably the best defensive unit we've ever seen in the NFL. And sure, I'm rambling away from Andy Dalton, but I think this was just kind of what are we going to do now? We whiffed on Wilson. We really weren't willing to give up that much for Wentz. I don't think they believe they can get Deshaun Watson because it seems like Houston's just holding him as a prisoner. And I don't know if they're just not impressed with the quarterbacks in the draft, but I think that's something they really need to do is focus on the draft instead of hiring or signing a bunch of older free agent quarterbacks who have low ceilings and high floors, or in the case of Nick Foles, either an insanely high ceiling or an insanely low floor, and there's nothing in the middle. But I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Dalton's the starting quarterback in Chicago next year. I wouldn't be surprised if we won probably a similar amount of games, 8-9 games, maybe make the playoffs, and just be in no man's land. That's literally where we are. We are in no man's land. We have a bunch of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but our offense is non-existent. None. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we go on some incredible season like we did in 2018 that made me really believe again that the Bears could be something special. Not like 2020 where it's just, we backdoored into the playoffs because John Wolford somehow beat the Cardinals in the last game of the season. But Andy Dalton, $10 million for a year, not terrible. I just don't think it's the greatest asset management. I wasn't one of those people who really wanted Pace or Nagy to be fired. I thought people were a bit overzealous. But I definitely say after that major whiff, I think Pace needs to be at least the hot seat needs to get hotter. Because I know there were a lot of people out for their heads. I think they just needed a quarterback that they could choose, or Nagy could choose at least. And if that's really Andy Dalton, I don't know what to think about Matt Nagy's analysis as a supposed quarterback whisperer and offensive guru type. But anyway, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you appreciated this video. I have also now set up a PayPal account, so if you're feeling generous, I'll post that in the description. That's if you're feeling generous. I take it. It'd be appreciated, but it is definitely not required by any means. I'm just a kid doing this for fun. But I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope my genuine reaction as a Bears fan made this a little more entertaining. But once again, thank you all for watching. Roll Tide, roll out, and bear down. Peace.